Chapter 1155. In the world of fairy tale, Noah had experienced many battles on Celestial Wolf Island. First, he had a battle with Laxus because of the S-rank magic shooter advancement exam. Then, because of the monsters that jumped out from time to time on Celestial Wolf Island, he fell into an almost endless battle. On top of that, they had to engage in an all-out battle with the grimoire heart that was attacking them. On Celestial Wolf Island, Noah had fought many battles. Of course, whether it was Laxus, Azuma, or Hades, to Noah, they were not difficult opponents, not to mention the rest. Therefore, the battles with these people were actually quite easy. The most important one was the battle with the Black Dragon, Conarolia. Without using his authority, Noah used all his skills in the battle with the Black Dragon that existed in tacit revelation. After that, Noah immediately returned to Between Worlds. Under Gaia and Alea's request, he followed Nasaric and descended into this world together. He did not rest for a second in between. This way, no matter how vigorous Noah was, once he lay on the bed, he would immediately fall asleep. Therefore, when Noah woke up, it was almost the next morning. After a comfortable sleep, Noah opened his eyes, stretched, and then lifted the blanket, intending to get up. However, just as he was about to get up, Noah felt a soft and comfortable weight in front of him, making him slightly startled. Then, as if thinking of something, he looked in front of him. Master! Her long silver-white hair was not messy in the slightest as it flowed down her slender back, complementing her milk-white skin. Lying on top of Noah's body, Aster seemed to be sleeping soundly. She tightly hugged Noah's neck, her small lips were still murmuring Noah's name. That look was simply adorable to the max. Aster, you're not wearing clothes again. Noah's expression more or less carried a trace of helplessness, but it was more of a doting feeling. Although it could not be said that he was used to it, but with Aster's appearance in front of him from time to time, Noah would not make a fuss like before. After paying attention to not look at some parts of Aster's body that he should not look at, Noah carried a doting mood and lightly stroked Aster's head. Ugh, Aster, in her sleep, seemed to be able to feel Noah's touch and let out a comfortable sound. Her expression became more peaceful, and she slept more soundly. Seeing Aster like this, even Noah didn't have the heart to wake up this cute elf girl. Let Aster sleep for a while. With such thoughts in mind, Noah stroked Aster's head while he was sleeping. Moreover, I can also slightly update my ability value. After finding such an excuse for himself, Noah continued to stroke Aster's head and then closed his eyes. After converting the unlimited energy in his body into divine power, he let the divine power flow out from the divine power source and spread throughout his body. Noah's mind was immersed in the engraving on his back. A familiar light source lit up from Noah's back, bringing along complex and mysterious characters that jumped back and forth in the air, gradually changing. During this time, Noah's mind gradually received the feedback of the updated ability value, automatically appearing the information of the updated ability value. Noah Dole LV. For Strength, S. 966, SSS, 1757, Durability, S. 976, SSS, 1758, Dexterity, S. 970, SSS, 1755, Agility, S. 985, SSS, 1760, Magic, S. 959, SSS, 1743, Mystery, G Magic Conductor, HG Swordsman, HG Magic Weapon Refinement Steel Making Magic Copy, Refine, and Forge Weapons Copy, Refine, and Forge Weapons will be weakened to a certain extent depending on the level, performance, and ability of the weapon. Copy, Refine, and Forge Weapons will be maintained for a certain period depending on the level, performance, and ability of the weapon. Swords Protection Permanent Magic. Permanent protection will be obtained according to the attributes of the Contract Spirit. Contract Spirit as a Sword Spirit, obtain the protection of the Sword Spirit and weaken physical attacks. The degree of weakening will be increased or decreased according to the strength and ability of the target. Cold smelting quick attack magic gradually turn the target into steel. Successful tempering will cause the target to shatter. Tempering speed will be determined according to the strength and ability of the target. Skills protection from the world permanent skill. Equivalent to luck. Events that are directly related to luck will eventually lead to the most favorable result. After the updated ability value, Noah was more or less surprised. Proficiency increased by about 4,000. Isn't this too fast? Since leaving the world of looking for a chance encounter in the underground city, there was no longer a way to kill a large number of monsters like in the underground city to obtain enough experience points to level up. Noah had not improved by such a large margin for a long time. Moreover, compared to any of the previous times, the improvement this time could not be said to be small. Not to mention, even the development ability, magic conductor, and swordsman, had improved by a stage. It must be known that compared to the basic ability, the improvement of the development ability was more difficult because there was no proficiency. Basic ability proficiency increased by about 4,000. And 2 development abilities improved by a stage. If this were to happen in the world of looking for a chance encounter in the dungeon, this would be an impossible situation. Not to mention, Noah was a LV for level 2 adventurer, and his all ability value was at the S stage. To be able to improve so much under such circumstances, it was really a bit unbelievable. However, Noah also understood the reason. The battle with Akonarolia increased my experience points by a lot. After all, Akonarolia's strength was stronger than any floor master in the underground city. A level 4 floor master like Goliath would probably be killed with a slap. Now, my physical ability should be better than Hercules in the form of a servant, right? Noah slowly opened and closed his palm, feeling the strength and feeling when he clenched his fist. Finally, he came to a conclusion. It should be more or less better, but it would be difficult to completely crush him. It was like taking 2 eggs and colliding them with each other. One of the shells was slightly harder than the other, but if they collided together, the result would be that both eggs were broken. To completely crush Hercules in the form of a servant, Noah estimated that he would have to level up to LV5 and become a level 1 adventurer. Thinking of this, Noah was about to get up when the door was knocked. Then, a voice came from outside. "Lord Noah, may I ask if you're awake?" "Annabelle." Noah, who recognized the voice, responded directly. "I'm awake." "What's the matter?" "Yes," Annabelle said. "Sir Yair Bade has gathered all the guardians in the throne hall according to Sir Noah's instructions." "Oh." Noah raised his eyebrows and smiled slightly. "I'll go over now." After spending about 10 minutes washing up, Noah walked out of the room, took Annabelle, and walked down to the door of the throne hall. At this time, Annabelle, who had been walking behind Noah to show Noah's leader position, took a step forward. For the first time, she passed Noah's position and came to the door. Before Noah could, she helped Noah open the door of the throne hall. Gotcha! Amidst the heavy echoes that sounded like the doors of a castle being opened, the vast royal hall was presented before Noah. Noah immediately saw it. In the throne room, there were 6 people waiting here. They seemed to be discussing something. It wasn't until Noah appeared that the 6 people who were talking looked in the direction of Noah, and then they all knelt on one knee. Chapter 1156. The underground tomb of Nassarik came from a game called Yggdrasil. Since it was a game, there would naturally be levels. In Yggdrasil, regardless of whether it was the level of characters, monsters, or NPCs, the maximum level was 100. In the underground tomb of Nassarik, there were no more than 10 max-level NPCs. Most of these max-level NPCs had been given the position of guardian and were in charge of managing 1 or more floors. In the game, these NPCs were also the bosses of each floor of the underground tomb of Nassarik and were in charge of fighting enemies. Therefore, if Noah wanted to understand the underground tomb of Nassarik, he naturally had to start with these max-level guardians. This was the reason why he had asked Yerbay to gather all the guardians. Therefore, Noah cast his gaze on the guardians who were kneeling on one knee in the throne room, and the first thing he noticed was a girl. It was a young girl wearing a black evening gown. The dress was swollen like a cake dress. Her upper body was draped in a cardigan decorated with lace and ribbons. She also wore long lace gloves on her hands. Almost no skin was exposed. She looked to be about 14 or 15 years old and still had a childish air. Her facial features were quite regular, but her skin was abnormally pale like white wax. Her long silver-gray hair was tied to one side and hung down. She was cute and beautiful, but her chest was a little inconsistent with her age and appeared to be high and bulging. She was the guardian of the first, second, and third floors of the underground tomb of Nassarik Zaisha Bradfren. Next to Zaisha was an alien that emitted a cold aura. It had a huge body that was more than 2 meters tall, and its entire body was ice blue like ice. It looked like an insect that walked on 2 legs. It looked like a mantis, a grasshopper, or a fusion of the two and transformed. It had a tail that was twice as long as its height, and its entire body was covered with sharp icicle-like spikes. It also had a seemingly strong and powerful jaw. This xenomorph had 4 arms and a chilling aura emanating from its body. Its icy blue exoskeleton looked like a suit of armor. Its shoulders and back even bulged out like icebergs. It gave off a creepy feeling, but at the same time, it also gave off a majestic aura. It was the guardian of the 5th level of the great tomb of Nassarik Cositis. Opposite Zaisha and Cositis, there were 2 children kneeling on one knee. The 2 of them looked exactly the same. They looked to be around 10 years old, and both of them had a pair of pointy ears, slightly tanned skin, and short hair that reached their shoulders like golden silk. It was obvious at a glance that these 2 children were twins. The only difference was that one of the twins had a bright expression on his face and wore white trousers on his lower body, while the other had a weak expression and wore a white skirt on her lower body. Other than that, the rest of their body parts were almost identical. The one wearing the white trousers was the older twin, the guardian of the 6th level of the great tomb of Nassarik Yon Bella Fiora. The one in the white dress was the younger of the twins, Mare Bello Fiori, one of the guardians of the 6th level of the great catacombs of Nassarik. It was emphasized again. The one wearing trousers and looking as cheerful as the sun was the older sister. The one wearing the skirt and looking very weak, making people want to protect her, was the younger brother. The one being boyish was the older sister. The one with the weak aura was the younger brother. Because it was very important, it was best not to forget. As for the remaining person, he was about 180 centimeters tall. His skin was tanned as if he was often exposed to the sun. He had an Asian face and his combed back hair was quite black. He also wore a pair of round-rimmed glasses, a British-style suit, and a tie. He looked like a rather capable businessman. Behind him, there was a silver metal tail. There were 6 spikes at the front of the tail, and light black flames constantly swayed around it. His entire body gave off an evil aura. He was the guardian of the 7th level of the great tomb of Nassarik Demiurgos. In front of these 5 people, Yair Bella was like a leader. She led a group of guardians and also respectfully knelt on one knee. This was because this beautiful girl was the chief guardian of the entire great tomb of Nassarik Yair Bella. Apart from the guardians of the 4th and 8th levels, the guardians of the entire great tomb of Nassarik with the highest status and strength all knelt on one knee in front of Noah, offering the courtesy of a subject. Annabelle, who helped Noah open the door to the throne room, stood to the side without a trace and stood at the door. It seemed that she had no intention of following Noah into the throne room. As the butler of the great tomb of Nassarik, Sebastian's level was also full. As for the combat maids of the Pleiades star cluster who directly belonged to Sebastian, their levels were between 40 and 70. Whether it was strength or status, Annabelle was lower than the guardians. Therefore, This combat made with a serious personality would never do anything that crossed the line in this situation. Noah also understood this point. Under Annabelle's gaze, he walked into the throne room. The moment Noah walked into the throne room, the chief guardian, Bella, lowered her head. "Greetings, Lord Noah." As soon as Bella's voice fell, the guardians immediately lowered their heads. "Greetings, Lord Noah." It had to be said that this show of extravagance was really full. Since this was the case, Noah would not be so tactless as to destroy the rare atmosphere that these guardians had brewed. Under the respectful welcome of the guardians, he walked up the stairs and sat on the throne. Of course, Noah did not have the intention to put on airs. His sitting posture was quite casual, even a little lazy. He supported his face with one hand and placed it on the armrest of the throne. After looking around at the guardians below, he spoke. "Didn't you say to gather all the guardians? Where are the guardians of the 4th and 8th floors?" Because the 9th and 10th floors were where the guild members of Anne's old gong used to operate, there were no guardians on these 2 floors. If an enemy were to invade the 9th or 10th floor, they would no longer be facing the guards of the NPCs, but the guards of the entire Anne's gong. Therefore, only the 1st to the 8th floor had NPC guardians. Now, the guardians of the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 5th, 6th, and 7th floors, as well as the chief guardian, were all present, but the guardians of the 4th and 8th floors were not. It was no wonder that Noah had such a question. The one who answered Noah's question was Bella. The guardians of the 4th and 8th floors have special existences and duties, so it is not suitable for them to come here to greet you, Lord. Therefore, I acted on my own initiative and did not let the guardians of the 4th and 8th floors come. Now that Bade had mentioned it, Noah finally remembered. The guardian of the 4th floor was not an NPC, but a large golem that was used for strategic sieges. It did not have self-awareness, and it needed a lot of time to activate. It was also more than 30 meters tall, so it was naturally impossible to call it over in this kind of situation. The guardian of the 8th floor was even more special. Not only was its level not at the maximum level of 100, it was only level 35, and its combat strength was almost 0. It was the final line of defense for the 8th floor, which was in front of the 9th floor, where Anne's old gong was located. It basically only had one purpose. That was to kill the enemy who had the ability to invade the 8th floor of the great underground tomb of Nasarek, and who was about to break through to the 9th floor where Anne's old gong was located. Once it was killed, this special guardian would activate an extremely special ability. In the past, 1,200 players were completely annihilated on the 8th floor. Therefore, such a guardian who would drag everyone down with him should he die casually naturally couldn't be called over casually. "I see." Noah nodded. "I understand." The moment he finished speaking, Noah narrowed his eyes. Pause. In the next moment, golden ripples continuously fluctuated around Noah, and one by one, treasures shot out in the direction of the guardians. Chapter 1157. Pause. When the sound of space trembling reverberated from the throne, the group of guardians who had their heads lowered were immediately shocked. They raised their heads almost reflexively and looked up. Then, the scene that appeared in front of everyone left every guardian in shock. They saw that around Noah, who was sitting lazily on the throne, extremely bright golden ripples fluctuated out of the space one after another. Inside, various weapons such as swords, sabers, spears, halberds, and other weapons slowly appeared. In a game called Yggdrasil, there was naturally such a thing as equipment. The guardians of the underground tomb of Nasarek who were transferred from Yggdrasil were shocked because of 2 reasons. 1. In the game, under normal circumstances, one could only equip one weapon. This was a matter of course. 2. In the game, there were also levels of equipment. According to the settings of Yggdrasil, whether it was equipment, tools, or items, starting from the lowest level. They were divided into low level, mid-level, high level, heritage level, relic level, legendary level, and the highest level artifact level. There were a total of 8 levels. Above the highest level artifact level, there were also a limited number of world-level tools. However, the so-called world-level tools were no longer something that could be owned by a player. Therefore, in Yggdrasil, the highest level equipment, tools, and items generally referred to the artifact level. All the guardians here were max-level NPCs. However, even so, among the guardians present, the only equipment that could be owned was the artifact level. Now, the scene that appeared in front of the guardians subverted their hearts. Under normal circumstances, one could only equip one weapon, but Noah was using more than 10 weapons at this moment. In the case where even a full-level guardian could only hold one artifact-level weapon, the weapons that Noah took out at this moment were almost all comparable to or even surpassing the brilliance of a divine artifact-level weapon. Therefore, the group of guardians only had time to be shocked. In the next second, the sabers, swords, spears, halberds, and other weapons that were reflected in the brilliant golden ripples trembled and suddenly burst out, falling one by one like thunder. Boom! A loud explosion immediately shook the entire throne room, setting off an astonishing fire and shock wave that swept in all directions, causing the huge flags that were inserted into the surrounding walls to sway crazily. Ah! The group of guardians who had reached full level in Yggdrasil were blasted away by the astonishing flames and shockwaves. They screamed and rolled on the ground one by one under the attack of bursting scorch. After rolling a few times, they stopped. In the throne room, the shockwaves gradually subsided, but the astonishing flames were still in the air, illuminating the entire somewhat dim space. It also told everyone present that what had just happened was real. Noah began to attack the guardians who had presented themselves to him as his subordinates. The sudden development made all the guardians who were blasted away. Not to mention the guardians, even Annabelle, who was waiting at the door, was shocked. After recovering from her shock, she quickly knelt down on one knee with a face full of panic. Not only Annabelle, but even the guardians who were blasted away got up one after another. They did not care about the traces of scorch on their bodies. They knelt down on one knee in panic and lowered their heads heavily. Please calm down. Sir Noah. Yerbade squeezed out a voice that sounded like he was about to cry. If we have done anything wrong, please punish us, Sir Noah. Zaisha, Yon, Mare, Cosets, and Demiurgos also shouted loudly. Please punish us, Sir Noah. Obviously, everyone thought that they had done something wrong and angered Noah, which made Noah suddenly attack them. In this regard, Noah just stood up, walked forward slowly, and spat out in different words. No, you didn't do anything wrong. It's just that I don't like you, so I blasted you away. This sentence made everyone, led by Yerbade, widen their eyes in disbelief. Because I don't like you. Because I don't like you, so I blasted everyone away. The guardians of the big underground tomb in Nassarik almost couldn't believe their ears. What? Noah said indifferently. Do you think I'm rude and unreasonable? No. I wouldn't dare. Yerbade bit his lip, and his shoulders trembled. As a supreme sovereign, how can you be rude and unreasonable? However, Noah denied Yerbade's words. No, this is the so-called rude and unreasonable. Moreover, there is nothing more rude and unreasonable than this. After saying this, Noah slowly raised a hand to his side. Therefore, I have to tell you that I will be even more rude and unreasonable from now on. Blades, swords, spears, halberds, and all sorts of other treasures suddenly emerged from the golden ripples around Noah and pointed at Yerbade and the others. Because I really don't like you, blasting you away is no longer enough to satisfy me. I'm going to kill you for real. The heavy and substantial pressure, along with Noah's ruthless and unreasonable words, pierced into the hearts of the guardians. If you want to live, then stand up, resist, and kill me. This sentence made the hearts of all the guardians of the big underground tomb in Nasarek tremble. Their eyes were filled with intense despair. That despair was not directed at Noah. Instead, it was directed at himself. No. Yerbade shouted out the thoughts in the hearts of all the guardians present. How could we possibly make a move against you, a supreme sovereign? However, this sentence was met with a leisurely smile from Noah. If you don't resist, then only death awaits you. Hearing this, the group of guardians actually raised their heads in unison and said in unison, "Our lives belong to Lord Noah." After saying that, the guardians lowered their heads and closed their eyes, looking as if they were willing to be beheaded. Among them, Yerbade's heart was filled with sorrow. How could this young lady not be heartbroken when her beloved master said that he did not like her to the point of wanting to kill her? The rest of them, on the other hand, had fearful yet determined looks on their faces. Even so, none of the guardians present, including Yerbade, had any grudges against Noah's brutality and cruelty. Noah looked at the group of guardians who lowered their heads obediently, looking as if they would have no regrets even if they were killed. A thoughtful look flashed across his dark, deep eyes. Noah did not really dislike these guardians to the point of wanting to kill them directly. Noah just wanted to know if these guardians would be as loyal to Noah, the owner of the underground tomb in Nasarek, no matter what the situation was. After all, no matter how accurate the settings in the game were, they could not be so accurate to the point of including people's hearts. It was like a person who was a traitor. Even if they were absolutely loyal to others, once they were disappointed or even rebellious, they would slowly walk the path of betrayal. Noah did not believe that the loyalty of these guardians in the game was off the charts, and that they would always be so loyal in the future. The human heart was complicated. It was hard to say when a guardian would become dissatisfied with being loyal to Noah and start to rebel. That was why Noah treated these guardians in the most rude and unreasonable way. If even this kind of rude and unreasonable behavior would not cause the guardians to betray him, then Noah would more or less choose to believe these people. He believed that these people would not go against his will. In that case, at least under Noah's leadership, the possibility of the underground tomb in Nasarek bringing serious effects to this world would be greatly reduced. Of course, he had to add fuel to the fire. "Is that so?" Noah said. "Then what if I tell you to kill everyone except yourself?" Yerbade quickly asked. "What do you mean?" "We have offered the highest level of loyalty to the Honorable Supreme. This should have satisfied the Honorable Supreme." Demiurgos lowered his head slightly and said. "However, the Honorable Supreme is dissatisfied that we even obeyed orders to kill each other." "Ha!" Ma blinked and said in confusion. "Why?" Before Demiurgos could explain, Yerbade suddenly raised his head. "Is there a need to say it?" Yerbade crossed his hands in front of him as if he was praying, looking as if he was bemoaning the state of the universe and pitying the fate of mankind. "Because Lord Noah is a compassionate Honorable Supreme. He does not wish to see us kill each other." Yerbade's words made the group of guardians fall silent at first, but soon after, they all revealed moved and grateful expressions. "To us, the Honorable Supreme's orders are absolute," Demiurgos concluded with a sentence. "However, to the Honorable Supreme, seeing that we did not hesitate to carry out the orders to kill each other, it must be quite heart-wrenching, right? So that's why you said that Lord Noah was both happy and worried about our performance." Cossitz nodded in understanding and then said words of admiration. "As expected of the Honorable Supreme. He is so compassionate." The rest of the guardians nodded in agreement, looking grateful and full of longing. If Noah saw this scene, he would definitely not know whether to laugh or cry, right? Indeed, Noah was both happy and worried. The joy was indeed because he had confirmed the loyalty of the guardians. However, he was worried because the guardians did not place as much importance on the concept of companions as Noah had thought. After all, to Noah, companions were existences that needed to be highly valued. Noah's friends who had grown up with him thought the same way. That was why they were both happy and worried. They could not be considered compassionate, right? It's useless to think about it now, Bade stood up and said firmly. Guardians, we have to find an opportunity to make up for today's loss of composure and make our honorable supreme satisfied with us. That would be the greatest glory for us. The guardians made up their minds and nodded heavily. At this moment, Demiyagos finally noticed. Beside him, Siataya had been half kneeling, her head lowered, and she seemed to be silent. Satya? Demiyagos asked in confusion. What's wrong with you? The girl named Satya slowly raised her head. Her eyes were misty and she looked extremely intoxicated. Lord Noah is so powerful. I really hope he treats me like how he treated me just now. Suddenly, the entire hall fell silent. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what to say. However, everyone was used to it. This was because everyone knew that Satya had all kinds of inexplicable hobbies. Just now, Noah's actions had probably aroused the masochistic part of her heart, right? Hence, Bade spoke with extreme disdain. What a lowly vampire. The intoxicated Satya immediately sobered up and glared at Bade. Bade also glared back, not to be outdone. The two beautiful girls stared at each other, causing the guardians to look at each other in dismay once again. What was so strange about sacrificing everything for one's creator? However, Noah was not the creator of the great underground tomb of Nasarek. The real creator of the great underground tomb of Nasarek was the player Ains Ur Gong. Noah just took over this position under the arrangement of Gaia and Alea. In other words, Noah was not qualified to be sacrificed by the NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nasarek. This was also an indisputable fact. At that moment, Noah cast his gaze on Annabelle, who was kneeling on one knee in front of him. If I'm not wrong, you should still have the knowledge from the game, right? Ha! Annabelle was stunned. Maybe you didn't notice, but I have to tell you, Noah said bluntly. Now, we are in another world. The entire great underground tomb of Nasarek has been transferred to a strange world. It is no longer the Yggdrasil that you are familiar with. Annabelle could not react at all. It was apparent that Noah's words had more or less exceeded the understanding of this combat made. Seeing this, Noah was even more certain. These NPCs from Yggdrasil actually still retained everything from the game in the past, including knowledge and settings. However, these NPCs did not have the pure knowledge of data that did not have any emotions until yesterday. It was just like how everyone knew that they were born from their mother's 10 months of pregnancy, but one day, someone told them that they were born from a crack in a rock, and that their knowledge was just wrong knowledge that was imperceptibly influenced by humans. These NPCs from Yggdrasil should feel that they had a personality and soul from the moment they were created. In fact, until yesterday, they were just a piece of data. However, the knowledge and settings left behind when they were still data were left behind. Therefore, Annabelle and others knew that they used to be NPCs in the game, but they did not have the consciousness of being pure data. To put it simply, you are wrong to think that I am your creator, Noah said. I'm just an uninvited guest who suddenly broke into your world, and you're uninvited guests who suddenly broke into this world. Because we're both uninvited guests, that's why we interacted. In fact, before yesterday, we didn't have any relationship at all. That's all. How can this be? Annabelle looked like she could not understand. You are our utmost exalt. We know that very well. This knowing itself is just a relationship that is set up. In fact, it is not like this at all. Noah also bent his knees and maintained the same height as Annabelle. He looked into Annabelle's eyes and said, "I'm not the one you should be loyal to. I just came here with such an identity. If you're willing to listen to me, I'll lead you to survive in this world. However, I'm not the reason for your survival. You have to be clear about this." Annabelle stared blankly at Noah, who had a serious expression on his face. There was also the strongest world-class item. It was said that it could continuously grow stronger without limit. After a period of time, the wielder would be able to conquer the entire underground tomb of Nasarek. Of course, the world-class items named 20 were too powerful, and would disappear after one use. Although the rest of the world-class items weren't like this, since it was a world-class item like the 20, its effects and uses could be imagined. It was easy to imagine the power of the Staff of Ains Ur Gong, which was comparable to such a world-class item. Unfortunately, it's going to be mine now. Noah, who was standing in front of the Staff of Ains Ur Gong, reached out his hand and held the staff. Wang. The moment Noah held the Staff of Anzi Ulkyong in his hand, the Staff of Anzi Ulkyong emitted a flickering reddish-black light. In the light, faces full of pain appeared one after another. Then, they collapsed and disappeared. Then, they appeared again and again. It was so realistic that one could almost hear the painful wails. This scene made Noah frown. How bad of a taste is this? In fact, if he thought about it carefully, since the creatures in the underground tomb of Nasarek were all aliens, then the nature of the player who created this stronghold, Ains Ur Gong, was obvious. It must be the kind of existence that was like a villain and evil, right? And this kind of setting would indeed make some people feel excited. Unfortunately, Noah was not one of them. He did not have the twisted mentality of feeling happy when he saw others in pain. Naturally, he would be a little unhappy. Forget it. Noah removed the Staff of Ains Ur Gong from his body. For the underground tomb of Nasarek, this staff is still very important. I'll take it with me for now. When he held the Staff of Ains Ur Gong, Noah could clearly feel that his abilities in all aspects had improved. Could this be considered a characteristic of equipment that was born in the game? For example, it could increase his attributes. Moreover, the Staff of Ains Ur Gong could not only increase his attributes, but it also had many hidden skills and magic. Among them, there were even some skills and magic effects that surprised Noah. In terms of functions and effects, this staff is probably comparable to an X-grade relic, right? This was not an exaggeration. This was because Noah realized that if he used the Staff of Ains Ur Gong, he could even do something as ridiculous as resurrecting the NPCs in the underground tomb of Nasarek. As for resurrection, even in Noah's treasure vault, he could not find a relic that had the same effect. With this ability, how could the Staff of Ains Ur Gong not be an X-grade relic? However, this is also related to the different worlds, right? Noah held the Staff of Ains Ur Gong tightly and said to himself, "After all, resurrection is a common occurrence in the game. Therefore, that test could also be said to be for the sake of the great tomb of Nasarek." In this regard, the Guardians had their own insistence. "Our lives belong to you," Yair Bade said solemnly. "No matter what your intentions are or how you treat us, we will have no regrets." The other Guardians also seemed to agree, which made Noah's eyes flicker. Although it was only the settings of the game that caused these Guardians to be so loyal, no matter what, Noah had obtained this loyalty. Since he had obtained the loyalty of everyone in the great tomb of Nasarek, then it was also Noah's responsibility to work for them. Just like when he became the God Slayer, the first thing Noah felt was not the benefits of power and strength, but the responsibility of standing up for the humans who were threatened by the god of disobedience. Becoming the master of the great tomb of Nasarek symbolized power and strength, but at the same time, it also came with such a responsibility. If these are your sincere words, then I will accept your resolve. Noah suddenly smiled. Let me be your master. Yes. Become the master. It was not like before, where it was just a relationship. Here, the relationship between Noah and the great tomb of Nasarek was truly confirmed. When they heard Noah's words, the guardians, led by Yerbade, were overjoyed. They all knelt down on one knee and offered the highest respect. We swear that we will give everything we have to you, the Supreme Master. At this point, Noah had truly become the master of these guardians' loyalty. For this world, the great tomb of Nasarek was undoubtedly a place that did not originally exist. Therefore, Noah was quite concerned about where the great tomb of Nasarek had been moved to in this world. If it was some deep mountain or forest, then it was a good thing. However, if it was moved to a place that was extremely close to humans, then it was not a good thing. Everyone in the great tomb of Nasarek was an abnormality. For humans, all the creatures in the great tomb of Nasarek were just monsters. If it was moved to a place close to humans, then it would either cause panic or attract hostility. Therefore, Noah was prepared to go to the surface to see what kind of world this was and what kind of place the great tomb of Nasarek was before making any further plans. Unfortunately, this mission was taken up by demiyugos at the first possible moment. There is no reason for the Supreme Master, Lord Noah, to personally deal with such a small matter. After saying this, demiyugos took the mission and went to the surface. Noah specifically ordered that, other than demiyugos himself, no abnormality creatures in the great tomb of Nasarek were allowed to be brought out. Although he more or less trusted the guardians, Noah was still not at ease with the rest of the people in the great tomb of Nasarek. Who knew? If he let them out, it would cause a situation that could affect this world. Chapter 1162. Actually, Nazarek's treasure hall was not in Nazarek's underground tomb. If he wanted to go to Nazarek's treasure hall, he had to use Ain's ring of respect to teleport. Therefore, when Noah used Ain's ring of respect to teleport to the treasure hall, the first thing that appeared in front of him was a dazzling golden color. The golden light was all brought about by the glittering gold coins. The place where Noah was now was a very vast palace. Inside the palace, there were many huge cabinets that were so tall that they could reach the ceiling. Inside, there were bursts of light that were even more dazzling than the golden light. Upon closer inspection, there were many luxurious-looking items lying in the huge cabinets. There were short staves inlaid with jade. There were protective gloves made of scarlet gold. There were beasts made of obsidian. There were daggers made of light purple crystal. There were crowns decorated with huge diamonds. There were coats made of golden beast skin. There were magic books with steel covers. There were black cloaks with countless small gems sewn on them. There were also scrolls that emitted a strong magical aura, precious stones that were as big as crystal balls, and pieces of crystals with small hexagonal crystal pillars embedded in them, etc. There were no most luxurious items, only more luxurious items. As for the center of the palace that had no cabinets, there were mountains of gold coins and gems piled up. The dazzling golden light that flickered in the entire space was emitted from these mountains of gold and gems. In addition, there was a faint purple gas floating in the air. Sensing the purple gas, Noah muttered to himself. Poison. That's right. The faint purple gas that filled the treasure hall was all poison. Moreover, it was a highly toxic poison that could kill any creature that did not have poison immunity in less than 3 steps. This was one of the measures set up to prevent outsiders from breaking into the treasure hall and stealing the treasures here. After all, the treasure hall was not in Nazarek's underground tomb, and there were no guards here. It would not be strange if someone came in. However, it was wrong to say that there were no guards. According to what Noah knew, there was actually a guardian in the depths of the treasure hall who was responsible for managing the treasure hall. There are quite a lot of interesting things. Noah looked around at the items in the huge cabinets and clicked his tongue in wonder. Every piece of equipment, every tool, and every item was at least at the level of a holy relic. As for the items below the level of a holy relic, they were piled up on the ground of the palace like the gold and silver treasures. Naturally, the first thing that Noah looked at was the items in the huge cabinets. In the game's terms, if the level exceeded a certain level, then it could not be resurrected. Well, it's better than nothing. With this thought in mind, Noah first threw the short staff in his hand on the ground. Then, the corner of his mouth curved up in an evil arc as he raised one hand, accompanied by the sound of space trembling. Golden ripples appeared one after another from the huge cabinets leaning against the wall. They swallowed the items one by one and kept them in Noah's treasure hall. Another sound of space trembling rang out. This time, the golden ripples appeared from the bottom of the rather valuable items on the ground and swallowed them one by one. In just a moment, the entire Nazarik's treasure hall was left with equipment, items that Noah did not care about or that were similar to Noah's treasure hole. As for the entire mountain of gold coins and gems, Noah did not care about them at all. There was a treasure hall that had a lot more than this and could automatically replenish itself after consumption. The things here are just appetizers. Noah turned his gaze in a direction. The things there are the real feast. On the wall where Noah's gaze landed, there was a huge door. No, it could not be called a door. To be more precise, it should be called the entrance of a passage. At the entrance of this passage, there was a black shadow stuck to it like a bottomless hole. The black shadow was a door that needed to be said with a specific password to open. The main body was a magic tool with such a function. Unfortunately, magic is useless to me. Saying this, Noah did not even say the password and directly slammed into the door. At the same time that Noah slammed into the door, the shadow-like door immediately rippled like the surface of the water. In the end, the place where Noah passed through suddenly became empty like a bubble that was pierced, allowing Noah to pass through. Then, a passage that revealed a quiet and solemn atmosphere appeared in front of Noah. On the walls on both sides of the passage, there were spaces that looked like exhibition cabinets. In the spaces, there were many exquisitely shaped items lying there. Some of these items were just flashy ordinary items, while others were rare items that were worth a lot of money. This scene made Noah very happy. Noah's voice seemed to have solidified the entire chaotic battle, causing everyone present to stop what they were doing and look over at the same time. "Lord Noah!" Yair-Bade hurriedly called out. "Please be careful." However, at the same time that Yair-Bade spoke, the demon slayer, suspended in mid-air, suddenly trembled and shot out. After drawing a perfect arc, it swept towards Noah's direction. This scene made the guardians, led by Yair-Bade, and even Sebastian and the combat maids, who were waiting on the side to provide support, go crazy. Don't even think about it. At this moment, everyone seemed to have gone mad as they rushed towards Noah with all their might. Under such circumstances, Noah frowned and stretched out his hand towards the demon slayer that was shooting towards him. Thus, the shining silver holy sword that was shooting towards Noah suddenly spun and fell into Noah's hand like a chick returning to its nest. Noah tightly grasped it. This unexpected turn of events made the top combatants of Nazarik's underground tomb, who were madly charging towards Noah as if they were going to use their bodies to block Noah's path, freeze. Their faces were filled with astonishment as they stopped in their tracks. As for the holy sword that was blooming with bright silver light, it seemed to be extremely docile and gradually withdrew its light. Seeing this, how could the people in the underground tomb of Nasarik not understand what was going on? Of course, Noah looked at Yair-Bade with a puzzled expression. "What's going on?" "No. That." The evil aura emitting from Yair-Bade's body slowly dissipated as he pointed at the demon slayer in Noah's hand with an uncertain expression. Just now, that strange weapon flew out from the Autarka's bedroom. Seeing that Yair-Bade still seemed to be unable to react, Demiurgo stepped forward and respectfully spoke. "It's like this, Lord Noah. Just now, the maids were planning to clean up the autarka's bedroom. Who would have thought that a weapon would suddenly fly out from the autarka's bed? We were worried that it was something harmful to the autark, so we planned to subdue it. Hearing this, Noah more or less understood what had happened. Chapter 1164. In the morning, after gathering all the guardians in Yerbet, Annabelle informed Noah to head to the throne room. Since Ashtar was still sleeping soundly, Noah didn't want to wake her up, so he left her behind and headed to the throne room alone. After all, there was an unbreakable contract between Noah and Ashtar. No matter how far apart they were, as long as Noah didn't leave this world and go to another world, he could use the power of the contract to summon Ashtar to his side. Of course, Ashtar could also use her own will to come to Noah's side through the contract. That was why Noah was relieved to leave Ashtar in his bed. However, what Noah didn't expect was that the people in the tomb didn't know Ashtar, let alone that Ashtar was lying in Noah's bed. Therefore, when the two met, there would naturally be all kinds of misunderstandings. Now that they saw the demon slayer obediently held in Noah's hand, the people in the Nassarik graveyard understood what was going on. The sword that suddenly flew out of Noah's bed was Noah's possession. As expected of the Supreme One, Demiurgos said in admiration. Only Lord Noah, the ruler of Nazarik's underground tomb, could possess such an extraordinary item. The NPCs in Nazarik's underground tomb nodded in agreement as they looked at Noah with admiration in their eyes. It wasn't like Yggdrasil didn't have weapons that would automatically attack the enemy. For example, Anzuar Kushizi's staff had an automatic attack system that could deal a heavy blow to a thief with bad intentions. However, the NPCs in the great underground tomb of Nassarik were shocked by the power of the demon slayer. Just now, the ones who faced the demon slayer were the guardians of the great underground tomb of Nassarik who had the highest combat strength. Although they hadn't used their full strength yet, including Yerbade, a total of 6 guardians were still unable to take down the demon slayer. One could only imagine how powerful it was. It was definitely a weapon comparable to a world-class item. That was what everyone thought. And it was precisely because of this thought that the scene that happened next shocked everyone. After understanding the whole situation, Noah silently raised the demon slayer in front of him. Ashtar, why don't you explain? Just when everyone was confused about why Noah was talking to his weapon, the demon slayer that Noah raised in front of him blossomed with a bright light. Immediately after, the shining silver holy sword slowly disintegrated into light particles and flew around Noah's body. Then, they gathered next to Noah and gradually turned into a human form. Elegant silver-white waist-length hair flowed down her soft and slender body. Ashtar, who was still wearing his usual Alicia Elven Academy uniform, floated down from the light and landed beside Noah with the tip of his foot. Seeing this scene with their own eyes, everyone was stunned. The weapon turned into a human. Noah awkwardly changed the topic. In short, Ashtar, you can't attack the people here in the future. They are all companions, understand? Yes. Ashtar was still expressionless, but she leaned her body against Noah and held Noah's hand tightly. I'm Master's sword, everything is as you wish. In an instant, Noah even heard a kacha sound, as if something had cracked. Then, Noah, who turned his head in fear, saw it. Yerbet and Satya, who had their heads lowered, emitted evil auras, as if their bodies were shrouded in the flames of anger and jealousy. This made Noah even more certain. He absolutely couldn't care less about Yerbet and Satya. Otherwise, he would definitely lose something very important. Rubbing his eyebrows, Noah ignored Yerbet and Satya, who were full of resentment, and said weakly to Seabass. Seabass, get someone to clean up this place. Yes, sir. Sebastian bowed and led the group of battle maids to leave respectfully. Before leaving, Annabelle seemed to have been secretly casting obscure glances at Noah and the team of battle maids. Presumably, the conversation in the morning was still bothering this battle maid. I've only been in this world for 2 days, and there are already so many problems to solve. Noah smiled bitterly, pulled himself together, and said to Demiyugos beside him, "Don't worry. Let's go inside and talk." "Yes." Demiyugos nodded respectfully. He had various special abilities such as ruling spells, as well as the smartest mind. On the other hand, Sebastian, who was the butler of Nazarik's underground tomb, was a dragonborn. In Nasarik, he was even stronger than Cositas in terms of combat ability. As for the chief guardian, Yerbade, he had the strongest defense in the entire Nasarik underground tomb. With his entire body covered in heavy armor, Yeerbade's defense could be said to be impeccable. That was why Yeerbade was arranged to be in the throne room. The first person that Noah saw when he arrived in this world was this chief guardian. Because of that, Noah agreed to Demiyugos' request to go to the surface to investigate. This most astute military counselor should know very well what kind of action to take under different circumstances. "It's great that I didn't directly descend in a place where people live." Noah shrugged. "But I don't know where to find traces of people. If I can't find them, it'll be troublesome." After all, if he wanted to understand this world, he had to first interact with people. Although hiding in the grassland might be able to minimize the influence of Nazarik's underground tomb on this world, once Noah left, he didn't know what would happen to Nazarik's underground tomb. Therefore, it was necessary to connect Nazarik's underground tomb to this world. "Y'all, Marley." Noah looked at the dark elf twins. "Is there any way to find people?" In Yggdrasil, the elves were the same as the magical races in the dungeon search for magical encounters world. They were the traditional elves in the fantasy world, unlike the elves in the sword dance of the elves, who were similar to the elementals. As dark elves, although Yael and Marley were abnormal creatures, their abilities were somewhat similar to traditional elves. For example, Marley was the strongest magician, and he was very good at earth and nature magic. Other than being a beast tamer, he was also very good at scouting and hunting. His movements in the forest were very nimble, and he had a permanent skill that allowed him to use his breath to release negative effects such as charm, poison, and so on. He was the king of the forest. If he wanted to find people, Noah would ask the two dark elves, "Lord Noah, do you want to find people?" Yael's eyes lit up, and he raised his hand like a primary school student. "I can let the magical beasts under my control search on the surface." "If that's the case, forget it," Noah rejected without hesitation. "If you want to send a large number of people to search, I would have let you bring the abnormal creatures in Nazarik's underground tomb to search. Why would you wait until now?" Yael was like a listless puppy, and his head drooped. "Then that," Maule said nervously. "But you can use long-distance scouting magic to search." "Oh." Noah's interest was piqued. "Do you know that kind of magic?" Marley was like a frosted eggplant, and he became listless. Evidently, Marley, who was good at earth and nature magic, did not know the kind of intelligence magic or support magic. "What a loss of composure," Cossiter exhaled white air, and said in the style of a pure warrior. "We gathered almost all the guardians, but we can't share Lord Noah's burden. This is an unprecedented loss of composure." That one sentence made all the guardians lower their heads in shame. "I'm sorry, Lord Noah." Zacia seemed to be in low spirits. "We can't share your burden. As a guardian, we are too incompetent." Yeerbade was also self-deprecating. "We have let down the Supreme Venerable's expectations of us. Don't make it sound so serious." Noah didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "It's only because I've restricted your actions in all aspects. Otherwise, such a small problem could be solved at any time, right? You don't have to take it to heart." With that, Noah stood up. "Let me take a walk on the surface." Hearing this, the guardians were shocked and hurriedly spoke. "This How can we trouble the Supreme Venerable to personally take action for such a small matter? That's right. Please leave it to us. We'll definitely give the Supreme Venerable a satisfactory result. All right, stop making a fuss. Since it's a small matter, there's no reason to make a fuss about it and decide who should do it, right? Noah said in an unquestionable tone. Furthermore, the Nasaric underground tomb has just been materialized in the game. There are no shortcuts in terms of management and operations that can be automatically carried out by the system. You have to summarize the specific management and operations of each floor. The guardians were instantly speechless. In that case, please at least let me go with you. Yair Bade stepped forward and pleaded with all his might. There's no reason to let the Supreme Venerable go to the surface alone without any guards. The other guardians nodded repeatedly. Only Zaisha was somewhat unwilling and seemed to want to go with Noah. Unfortunately, Yair Bade, who had impenetrable defense, was the right choice for a guardian. This matter concerned the safety of her master, so Zaisha wouldn't throw a tantrum here. This time, Noah was at his wit's end. Fortunately, although Yair Bade's gaze towards Noah was no less infatuated and passionate than Freya's, it did not have Freya's extremely blatant possessiveness. Otherwise, Noah would really have to keep a respectful distance from Yair Bade. However, he would still feel awkward. At that moment, Noah could only helplessly call out. Yair Bade. Yes. Yair Bade immediately responded in high spirits. What are you doing? Noah asked somewhat dispiritedly. Do you even need to ask? Yair Bade put on a praying posture, but his face was flushed as he stared at Noah with an intoxicated look. Of course I'm admiring the Supreme Lord Noah's figure. If you want to look at me, you can look at me anytime, right? Noah could not help but cover his face. Is it necessary to keep staring at me like this? Of course it's necessary. Yair Bade said this without hesitation. If I miss seeing the Supreme Lord for even a second, my heart will feel as if it's splitting apart. If it's 10 seconds. No, more than 5 seconds, then I'll definitely die of sadness. Is that so? The corners of Noah's mouth twitched. But our mission this time is to look for signs of human habitation, not to look at me. If you keep staring at me like this, how are you going to find any traces of human habitation? That's true. Yair Bade seemed to have just remembered the main mission, and looked extremely regretful and reluctant to part with it. Although I really want to continue admiring Lord Noah's figure, if I don't complete the mission given by Lord Noah, then I'm not qualified to be called a virtuous wife. Virtuous wife. Noah smiled embarrassedly and muttered. Shouldn't I be an assistant or something like that? No. Yair Bade said in a resolute tone, as if this was the correct way to go. I'm a virtuous wife. Yair Bade's resolute manner made Noah feel that this was the correct way to put it, and he suddenly felt extremely shocked. Could it be that this is some kind of skill or magic that affects one's mind and will? Does it have to be so dangerous? At this moment, Noah suddenly caught a glimpse of a forest below. To be more precise, he caught a glimpse of a village in the middle of the forest. It was a village with wheat fields all around it, and it was filled with the atmosphere of the countryside. It wasn't very civilized, but it gave off an aura of life. When he saw the village, Noah's eyes lit up, and he stood up. Yair Bade, is that a village? Yair Bade was stunned at first, but when he saw the village in the middle of the forest, he immediately smiled. Yes, Lord Noah, we found the village. Noah suddenly smiled. However, immediately after, the smile on Noah's face froze, and he frowned. This was because the situation in the village in front of him was somewhat inexplicable. From Noah's angle, he could clearly see that there were ant-like black dots running out of the houses, and they seemed to be in a panic. Other than these black dots that seemed to be in a panic, there were also black dots that were moving at an extremely fast speed from all directions of the village, constantly chasing after those black dots that were in a panic. What's going on? Noah felt that something was strange, and he controlled Vimana to lower its altitude. Not long after, Noah's pair of pitch-black and deep eyes began to reveal a terrifying expression. He saw that the black dots that were running out of the houses were villagers wearing crude clothing. As for the black dots that were chasing after these villagers, they were all wearing heavy full-body armor, holding sharp knight swords in their hands. They were mounted on horses, and they were constantly swinging their blades at the villagers. Every time a knight swung his sword, a villager would fall. The villagers had no strength to resist, and could only desperately run away. Under this inhumane massacre, the entire village seemed to have turned into a purgatory. An atmosphere of terror and panic filled the air, and there was even a hint of despair. Looking at the appearance of those fully armed knights, they shouldn't be bandits or robbers, but soldiers from somewhere, right? Soldiers slaughtering ordinary villagers? Humph, Noah coldly snorted. Yerbade, let's go down. Yerbade was startled, but soon after, as if he had thought of something, he asked doubtfully. Could it be that Sir Noah wants to save those inferior creatures? Lower-class creature. Noah looked at Yerbade. Don't forget, I'm also one of those inferior creatures you speak of. How could that be? Yerbade hurriedly said. Sir Noah is different from those humans. Just like the undying aliens, some are only low-level, while some are high-level. Naturally, Sir Noah is not one of those useless inferior creatures. Indeed, among humans, there are some existences that are not worthy of pity even if they die. Noah glanced at Yerbade. However, before I see it with my own eyes, I will not categorize everyone as hopeless. Whether or not they are useful, I will use my own eyes to judge. After saying that, Noah noticed something. In a corner of the village, a pair of sisters broke through the encirclement and escaped into the forest. However, behind the sisters, there were two knights chasing after them. Seeing this, Noah no longer hesitated. Thus, the Vimana floating in the air suddenly trembled, and like a sharp arrow, it flew in the direction of the forest. Chapter 1167. Ha! 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 Her breathing became more and more hurried. Thump! 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 Her heartbeat that only she could hear. Ah! Screams of agony came from her hometown that was getting further and further away. Stop right there. Don't even think about running away. The knights with a ruthless aura roared as if they were urging death to come closer. Every roar seemed to be telling the young girl, Unli, a fact. Even though her legs were trembling from running, her stamina was getting exhausted. Not long after, as a normal village girl, she could only welcome the hell that had slowed down a little. If Unli was alone, perhaps she would have already broken down and given up on running away. She would have accepted her fate and accepted her death in despair. However, the slender hand that Unli held tightly in her hand became Unli's motivation to not give up. That hand belonged to Unli's little sister, who was only 10 years old. It was this little sister who was 6 years younger than Unli that made Unli unable to give up easily. Ha! 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 Her breathing became more and more hurried. Sweat had already soaked Unli's clothes on her back. Even Unli was in such a state, let alone her little sister who was only 10 years old. Ah! At a certain moment, the little sister suddenly staggered and let out a sorrowful cry, almost falling to the ground. Fortunately, due to her young age, her little sister was very light. Unli, who had to farm every day, could easily pull her up and not lose her balance. However, this situation would undoubtedly make Unli anxious. Nim! Hurry! Let's keep running. N. The little girl called Nim nodded repeatedly as if she was about to cry. However, at the next moment, the voice that represented death rang in Enli and Nim's ears in exasperation. Run! Where can you run to? The voice made Enli and Nim's body stiffen instantly as they looked behind in fear. Over there, the two knights who were holding their blood-stained swords, and their armor and helmets were also stained with blood. They were angry because of the unnecessary pursuit and had already arrived behind the sisters. Damn it! One of the knights mercilessly raised his knight's sword towards Enli and Nim, who had stopped moving, and spat out some words of fury. How dare I waste my time on such a little girl? Looking at the blood-stained sword that was raised up high towards her, Enli's mind had already turned blank. She could only tightly hug her terrified little sister and close her eyes. In the next moment, the blood-stained sword that was raised high fell directly. Just as Enli and Nim were waiting for their impending death and pain, a faint sound of something breaking through the air suddenly came from afar, darting between a pair of knights and a pair of sisters. Clang! The sound of steel colliding with steel echoed in the air and entered Nim's and Enli's ears. Enli and Nim opened their eyes in horror when they didn't feel the excruciating pain they had imagined. He saw a figure. A figure with his back facing Enli, and Nim was facing the knight who was swinging his sword. The two knights suddenly stiffened. Because even if the knight's sword couldn't cut through steel like mud, it could still easily cut through flesh and bones, but it was blocked by a single hand. That hand didn't wear any armor. That hand didn't cast any magic. However, it was such a hand that the knight's sword couldn't even leave a scratch on its skin. In a crisp clashing sound, the sword was blocked by the hand. Bang! There were no premonitions. Just as the two knights were stunned by the unrealistic scene in front of them, following a heavy muffled sound, the knight whose sword couldn't cut through the skin on the bare arm was sent flying and smashed into a nearby tree. The force was so great that the tree that was smashed directly broke and slowly fell down. As for the fully armed and heavily armored knight, he slid down the broken tree trunk and fell to the ground. His head tilted to one side and he stopped breathing. Upon closer inspection, a huge dent was imprinted on the chest of the knight's armor. With such a powerful force, it was impossible for the knight to survive even if he wanted to. Looking at this scene, the other knight was completely stunned on the spot and lost his ability to react. Enli and the Nim sisters were also stunned and couldn't move. Until a somewhat displeased voice sounded. It seems that after the ability value update, I can't control the increase in physical strength. Opening and closing his clenched fist slowly, Noah lifted his head and looked at the remaining knight who was staring at him blankly. Then, he said faintly, "Don't worry about me. Forget it, a guy who can even kill innocent women and children without mercy, presumably, there's no need to be merciful." This sentence finally awakened the remaining knight. "You." The knight took a step back and roared fiercely. "Who are you?" Hearing this, before Noah had time to speak, a sharp voice that seemed to be able to tear through the air sounded. "Just a lowly creature. Who allowed you to speak to Sir Noah in that tone?" The moment the words fell, a flash of light slashed across the knight's neck. "Poochie." Accompanied by a crisp tearing sound, the knight's neck spurted out a large amount of blood. After a moment of stiffness, he fell to the ground. As for the part above the knight's neck, it was thrown high into the air and fell in front of Enli and Nim. After spinning a few times, it stopped. "Ah!" Enli and Nim finally let out a cry of grief. Amidst Enli and Nim's cries, a fully armored figure walked out from the side of the forest. It was a figure wearing a pitch-black color that covered its owner's entire body, not revealing a single bit of skin. In the open space of the village, the knights who were still enjoying the wails and screams of others 3 seconds ago, turned into steel statues in the end, listening to their own screams and screams. The faces of the statues made of cold steel still vividly showed the fear and despair that these knights involuntarily revealed a second ago. That scene was enough to make any timid person unable to sleep in the middle of the night after seeing it. Then, the knights who were lucky enough not to be turned into steel by Noah's cold smelting were only the 4 or 5 knights who were the furthest away and not in Noah's sight. However, those 4 or 5 knights were obviously scared out of their wits by the scene in front of them. Their companions who were enjoying the pleasure of chasing their prey with them a few seconds ago, at this moment, directly turned into cold steel statues with fear and despair. The fear in the hearts of these knights was imaginable. Escape. This was the first thought in the hearts of the 4 or 5 knights who survived. However, undoubtedly, there was a strong urge to escape, but the feet of those 4 or 5 knights were trembling all the time, and they couldn't move at all. There was no other way. Because no one knew whether they would slowly turn into cold steel like their companions the moment they turned around. No. It should be said that these knights were very clear about it. The moment they ran away, their own death would immediately come. This was the real reason why these knights felt despair and fear. Under such circumstances, Noah, whose eyes were still flashing with cold silver light, turned his head and looked at the 4 or 5 knights. The fear that accumulated in the hearts of these 4 or 5 knights finally burst out in one breath. A man who was obviously the captain of these knights let out a sharp cry of fear. You guys go. Charge. Stop that man. Don't let him come near me. This sentence clearly showed the selfish side of this knight captain. I'm not someone who can casually die here. Stop him for me. Stop him. Under the hysterical screams of the knight captain, the rest of the knights couldn't even move. They could only cry for their mothers and fathers. God! Why don't you save us? Undoubtedly, we are so pious. Why? God! The knights' cries for their parents made Noah's cold silver eyes show some disgust. Pious. That's right, these knights should be considered pious, right? In the last moments of their lives, they were still praying to God. If they weren't desperate, then they really wanted to be saved by God. But it was also because of this that these knights didn't feel any guilt when they attacked ordinary villagers who didn't have the ability to resist. After all, they all believed that they, who believed in God, would be forgiven in the end no matter how abominable their crimes were. Chapter 1169. Under the watchful eyes of the villagers, Noah separated the crowd and brought Bait to Enli and Nim, who were crying over their parents' corpses. Woo! Woo woo woo! Although Enli and Nim noticed Noah's arrival, the grief in their hearts could not stop their tears. They could only look at Noah, bite their lips, and hold back their cries. Under such circumstances, Noah looked down at Enli condescendingly and uttered such words. Do you want to resurrect your parents? That one sentence made the entire space that was filled with cries suddenly become deathly silent. Enli's crying also stopped abruptly. With a beautiful face full of tears, she looked up and stared blankly at Noah, murmuring. Resurrect. That's right, resurrect. Noah said faintly. I have a way to resurrect your parents. After saying that, Noah raised a hand. Whing. In the midst of the trembling sound, golden ripples undulated from above Noah's hand, and a short staff fell into Noah's palm. It was about 30 centimeters long, the color of ivory, and the front part was decorated with gold. The staff was engraved with strange runes, and it was filled with a holy aura. It was the resurrection staff. Lord Noah. Seeing this scene, the fully armed Bait let out a surprised and puzzled voice. Don't tell me, you want to use precious magical tools for these low, ordinary villagers? From Bait's voice, Noah could hear a strong sense of confusion and doubt. However, that was understandable. In the game Yggdrasil, the most important tools were scrolls, short staffs, magic sealing crystals, and so on. This was because these tools were magical tools, and they could be used to activate the magic that the tool itself carried. Among them, scrolls and magic sealing crystals were one-time consumables that could be thrown away after use. On the other hand, short staffs and magic staffs were tools that could be used to cast spells that were equivalent to the number of times they were stored. That is to say, if there was a short staff or magic staff that stored up 10 times of casting magic, then when the user used this tool to cast magic 10 times and used up all of the stored magic, this short staff or magic staff would disappear. Therefore, although magic tools such as short staffs and magic staffs were also consumables, compared to single-use scrolls and magic sealing crystals, their value would vary according to the number of spells stored. Of course, there were also factors such as the type and level of the spell. I have to mention it here. In Yggdrasil, there were a total of 11 levels of magic. Of course, even if it was a one-time use magic item, if the magic carried within it was not only a type of magic item that could display extremely precious effects, but also a high-level magic item, then it would definitely be more precious than a low-level magic item such as a short staff or a magic staff.